Beautiful, sunshiny day on May 25th, Memorial Day, Point of Fair, town of Champlain. Wanda Langley, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
What's going on here today?
The remains of a British soldier that was dug up in 1929 by my father-in-law, John Arnold Scales. They will be giving them official burial.
Isn't that amazing? And this little road is called the Scales Road, isn't it?
It sure is, and has been.
Off the Point of Fair Road. So you've got a family history involved here, huh?
I sure do.
Before we're finished here today, we're going to rededicate a monument that the Daughters of the American Revolution dedicated back in 1930. We're going to bury those remains of that British soldier that your ancestor dug up. And what a fitting tribute as part of the Quadricentennial here in 2009, huh?
Sure is.
Have you always known about this?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, they talked about it in your family as when you were a child?
When I married Mr. Scales' stepson, Charles Langley, back in 1964.
Is it? And you didn't really graduate with Calvin, did you?
I sure did, 1964, 45 years ago.
That was a good year, wasn't it?
Sure was.
Oh, Wanda, thanks so much for being with us today, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Tim Gagno, how are you?
Great, Gordy. How are you?
Great to see you. I love this Woodman of the World dedicated flagpole here.
Hey,
Isn't that nice?
that's what we do. We love to make sure that we get flags wherever they're needed.
I said to Calvin, I wonder if I could get one dedicated to me. He said, after you're deceased. I said, well, don't hurry it.
Gordy Little Park somewhere. We'll make sure there's a flag.
But isn't it nice to be able to do this? Put up a pole at such a historic place and then put a Woodman flag on it?
No, it's fantastic. We love doing it. We whenever we have the opportunity, anyone who needs a flag, we want to be there.
Your office is located where?
34 Riley in Plattsburgh.
Just want people to know that you're there available for anybody who wants to talk about Woodman of the World.
Sure, stop in and visit
This is one of the
anytime.
great things that Woodman does. How many flags has Woodman given over the years, and how many people remember Woodman because of their patriotism and their flags?
I'm not even sure I could count them all, but I know that whenever there's an opportunity, we're there, and throughout the United States, we're one of the leading donators of flags, so it's a fantastic thing and a great organization to be a part of.
And a nice day to have this ceremony, too.
Beautiful day.
Tony, my good friend, thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Gordy.
See you later.
Hold it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Elaine Cloutier, how are you?
I'm good. How are
Jim
you?
Rochester, how are you, buddy?
I'm fine, thank you.
The ink is still wet on the book. Come on.
That's correct. We just got it out the 22nd.
Tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, it's basically about my memories of Point of Fair when I was a youth. And we used to do haying and a few other things up here.
2 or 3 years ago, Jim.
2 or 3 years ago, yeah. And then we threw a little bit about history in there, but not too much. So
there's a lot of history here, and this land was your land?
Actually, lot number 1 was the Rochesters were the second family on that point.
Sounds like a song, this land is yours.
I know, it does.
The first one was the Walker family, and there's a big story about them I have in the book. So.
We'll make them buy the book so they can read it. Is it available?
It's available, yeah.
It's always available.
Today we're doing something through the Ross Point Champlain Historical Society, and they're going to use some of the proceeds for this interpretive center here.
Isn't it great to see it?
Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful day. It's wonderful. Elaine Cloutier, there was never a picture or a painting done of this house.
No.
Where did you conjure this from?
Well, the idea came, my father, when he was doing the book, he has some information about the White House, the fort at Point of Fair, and he said, I wish I had some kind of a drawing or something. I said, well, let's see what I can do, because I do some paintings. But we got
do some paintings. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I got most of the architectural information from Alan Everest's book.
Yes.
And
We're going to hear more about that history
yes.
of Pointe-à-Fer, yeah.
So this is kind of my rendition of what I thought, with historical facts that I got, of what it did look like.
Do you swear this didn't come to you in a dream?
No, I do swear.
That is absolutely beautiful and
Thank you.
historic. Why is that building historical?
Oh boy, let me.
Is that what they call the White House?
That's what they call the White House, yes.
I do have a little bit of history on the back
Oh.
because I had to look it up.
Well, let me read a little
Okay.
bit about it, because
Okay.
you're going to hear a lot more about it
Let me
today.
hold it for you.
For Pointe-à-Fer, Champlain, New York, known as the White House, built 1774 by the British, fell into American hands in 75 and back to the British in 1776. Command post for Burgoyne, 1777, remained in British command until the American possession in 1796, and it burned in 1805. No wonder there's no existing
No,
picture of it.
I know.
I think it's beautiful. Now,
Thank you.
are you selling these, Elaine?
Yes, and 50% of the proceeds are going to go towards an interpretive sign for this.
And isn't it nice, Jim, to see this happen now during the Quadricentennial year?
It sure is, yeah.
And it almost sounds trivial when we say we're quadricizing some of these events up and down Lake Champlain, but it's important that everybody get involved in it, because this, 400 years, that's before you were born, Jim.
Yes, for sure.
But it's nice to be here today for the rededication, for the burying of the bones of the British soldier finally laid to rest on Memorial Day 2009.
Beautiful day, too.
It is.
It's a great day to be here.
Yeah, it sure is.
I want to thank you for your piece of history here in the Northern Tier, James.
No problem,
For all
Gordy.
these years, we've chatted before.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Elaine, you and I have never met before, have we?
Well, we did at the Border Press. You did.
Oh yes, of
Yeah.
course we did. I remember that time. You and
I wouldn't talk.
You and I chatting about the saint and the fire
Yes,
thing.
yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank
and
you.
Good luck for everything.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
later.
you, Gordy. Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you.
Well, we brought him back after 400 years. Boy, you're beautiful. Abe Lincoln and Sam de Champlain all in one time.
Comment ça va matin, Monsieur Gordy Little? You're a little ahead of my time, but that's okay.
I love it. The beautiful
Thank you.
outfit. Where'd you get the outfit?
Well, it was made by Jane West's sister from Virginia Beach.
No kidding.
And without even being there, she, over the phone and emails, made the order.
Jane West very much involved in this. Who are you really?
I'm actually Richard Favreau. I live at Pointe-à-Fer, and also I'm a Champlain Town Councilman as well, and very involved in this, the whole Quadricentennial, and this is kind of one of our first ventures for the beginning of the quad in this area. So,
But isn't it great to have a spot like this that really is historical?
it is, Gordy. It really, really is. It's so, I guess the only one word to say, it's just like the weather today. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. And isn't it important that we rededicate this monument today?
Absolutely. It's for all fallen soldiers, no matter of what nationality they are. We're here without looking behind our back because of all our veterans who've lost their lives today.
I watched the PBS special last night, which would have been the 24th, from Washington, D.C., and I was deeply moved, as I am, by anything involving patriotism, especially when it involves our veterans and our fallen heroes, as we call them. And the big word that comes to my mind and has ever since we first celebrated Decoration Day when I was a young child is remembrance.
Yes.
And that's what this event is all about here today, right?
It certainly is, Gordy. It's just about the remembrance and actually the revival of what should have been here for years, but now it's reviving.
And the world's going to know about it because it'll be right here on Hometown Cable and on Plattsburgh.com and the internet, and people around the world will see the real Samuel de Champlain.
Thank you, Gordy.
You're
Yes.
the man. Thanks for your personal dedication to this area and its history.
Thank you. My pleasure.
See you later, my friend.
Very well.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Gordy.
We're a long ways from Rochester, but not very far from Rochester. Dan Rochester, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm glad to see you.
Good seeing you.
What does this day mean to you, having donated the property for this?
Well, it's nice to have a piece of this preserved. You know, it's it could be turned into a trailer park years down the road. You don't know what's going to happen to it 100 years from now. But donating this little piece, it was only a small piece. It wasn't a big deal.
It is a big deal.
But
I think it's a big deal.
this is going to live forever. So that's a nice thing.
On the Scales Road off the Point of Fair Road, nice little circular road that goes around.
Yeah.
What people may not be able to tell because of the lush vegetation is
Right.
we're only about 500 feet from Lake Champlain.
That's correct. We're very, very close to the lake. Where I'm looking over here, we're, I would say, 125 yards from the lake. We're surrounded by water. It's a peninsula. And the other side, Kings Bay, so yeah.
You can't beat it.
You can't beat it.
What precipitated this whole thing for you?
It started a few years ago. The guys would come over from Vermont and they would be looking for relics and stuff like that. And David Patrick and his buddies.
Oh, he's looking for relics.
Yeah. So it's I was talking to him about it for a few years, and there's a lot of history here. A lot of it, people don't realize what's here. And
It's our side.
That rabbit never had a chance.
jeez. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that's what got it going. For
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and then I was approached, asked if I could do something like this, and I agreed to it.
And why not?
Why not? Exactly.
What a
Yeah.
chance.
Now the bones, of course, were found in this area,
Yes.
so we wanted to get it as close as possible, and this was pretty close. I believe they were found actually on this side of the road, but you're only talking a few feet, so. Yeah.
I dare say that many people viewing this program, wherever they're viewing it, in the comfort of their own living room or somewhere,
Yeah.
have no idea what great history there is here in Point of Fair. We'll hear some of it officially during the program today.
Yeah.
But it is, we've talked about hallowed ground, and on Memorial Day, this is a good place to be, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It goes back. There was probably several thousand troops they figured died from smallpox.
Yeah.
So this is hallowed ground for sure.
Dan, thanks so much for your personal
Thank you very much,
contribution.
Gordy.
Have a great
Pleasure.
day.
You too. Thank you. Thanks, Calvin.
Thank you, everyone. At this point in time, I just want to stop and thank the Champlain, or the Town of Champlain Quadricentennial Committee for all their hard work in organizing today's ceremony. As chairperson, my committee members are Richard Favreau, Steve Southwick, Amy Garrett, Calvin Castine, Alan Kaufman, Jerry Favreau, Celine Paquette. Also would like to acknowledge Celine. Celine is the vice chair of the Fulton Hudson Champlain Quadricentennial Committee, and we have a little gift for Celine if she can come up. Wasn't in the program, but we're going to This is a local wine. First bottle presented by a local vineyard. I'm not going to say who because he has to remain anonymous, but you can probably figure it out.
John Zerlo.
Thank you for all the hard work you do representing our area. This town committee and all these committees are doing this work. There's a lot of work that went into this 20 by 20 area plot right here. I cannot tell you the hours that were spent, and we got a really good committee. I'd like to introduce our county clerk and former Area 1 legislator, John Zerlo, who will introduce two special guests that we have here today.
Can't do two things at once, so maybe you better hold my paper. Thank you, Chris. Today we are commemorating something that happened several hundred years ago, and I think that's how I got involved in this ceremony. The committee thought they wanted someone old to introduce the speakers so it would be a better fit, so that's why they asked me. But speaking of something old, before I introduce the two speakers, I would like to introduce two people. One who has been on Point Affair the longest, and that is Norm Minette, who is with us today. He's been here 55 years as a resident of Point Affair. There's Norm. We also have with us today a person who is the oldest in point of age. I won't tell you how old she is, but she was born in 1919. Florence Dolly Pettinger.
He's older.
I know.
Read Alan Everest's book on Point Affair. It's mentioned in there that in 1760, Rogers Rangers won a very important battle here on Point Affair. And that would be 250 years next May. So we have spoken
June
with
6th.
That's right. You got it, Calvin.
They will perform here next year, and we will have another celebration next year on Point Affair celebrating 250th anniversary of Rogers Rangers' big battle here on Point Affair. But today, my job is to introduce the speakers. Professor Thomas Mandeville has been teaching American history and political science at Clinton Community College for 20 years. He's also an adjunct professor at SUNY Plattsburgh. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in history and political science at Eastern Michigan University and his master's at Bowling Green University. Tom has directed summer workshops for Clinton Community on local historical sites, Native Americans in the Champlain Valley, the Revolutionary War on Southern Lake Champlain, the French and Indian War on Southern Lake Champlain, Burgoyne's campaign of 1777, Benedict Arnold's expeditions, exploring the Adirondacks, and also in business and history. Tom was also a crew member of the Wellington and the Battle of Plattsburgh celebrations in 2005. There is no one who knows more about this area and its past history and is in more demand to share his knowledge with others than Professor Thomas Mandeville, who, by the way, makes his permanent home here on historic Point Affair. Assisting Tom this morning is Thomas Prey, noted war reenactor who has in his possession a very extensive treasure trove of pre-Columbian Native American settlements in War of 1812 artifacts, which includes the British gunboat Prudence. Mr. Prey is an extremely knowledgeable source of information regarding the War of 1812 and the French and Indian War, and believes the Battle of Plattsburgh Bay influenced the outcome of the war by protecting Lake Champlain from British control. It is with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce these two very qualified gentlemen to speak on Point Affair this morning.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here with you on this great day that we're finally recognizing the importance of our very important Point Affair. My talk this morning and my colleague Tom Prey's talk, as has been advertised, are indeed based in part on Ellen Everest's research and also our own research that we performed over the past decade or so. What I'm going to do, first of all, is just give you a brief sort of timeline history of the point. Then I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to tell you briefly, he could spend hours telling you about this, but the Battle of Point Affair, which we're going to commemorate the 250th anniversary of next June. Now, to start things out, there was a Native American presence here on Point Affair approximately 11,000 years ago during the Paleo period, and no doubt these Paleo hunt-gathering societies exploited the food opportunities that were present here on the point. In the early 16th century, the St. Lawrence Iroquois, the Mohawk Iroquois, the Mohican, and the Western Abenaki peacefully occupied the Champlain Valley. The first French presence in the region was in 1534 when French explorer Jacques Cartier entered the Gulf of St. Lawrence while looking for the Northwest Passage. By the time of Samuel de Champlain's arrival in 1609, disease and warfare associated with the early French fur trade along the St. Lawrence had significantly reduced and changed the native population of the Champlain Valley when Champlain paddled by here. Between 1664 and 1763, the Champlain Valley witnessed a continuous struggle between the French and British empires for control of Lake Champlain and its tributaries, as these strategic water routes were the main access for the interior of the Northeast from Montreal to Manhattan. These conflicts included King William's War, which lasted from 1689 to 1697, Queen Anne's War, which lasted from 1702 to 1713, King George's War from 1744 to 1748, and the French and Indian War, which lasted from 1754 to 1763. During these wars, both nations' armies used the lake to stage raids both to the north and to the south. As a result of Queen Anne's War, a boundary between the French and British holdings on Lake Champlain was drawn at Split Rock near Essex as part of the treaty that settled that particular war. In the 1740s, the first permanent settlement on the northern lake was built at Windmill Point as part of the seigneury of Francois Foucault, who I probably butchered his name, but I'm not French. The famous Swedish explorer Peter Kalm made note of this settlement in his journal that he kept on his travels of the lake in July of 1749. My friend and colleague, Tom, will soon elaborate on the famous Battle of Point Affair that took place June 4th through 6th, 1760, which will end the French presence in the Champlain Valley. In 1774, by orders of then British General John Sullivan, a fortification was built on Point Affair known as the White House, which will, for the majority of the time, be occupied by the British until 1796 in the adoption of the Jay Treaty. David Patrick will discuss the history of the White House later when we commemorate the new marker. In August of 1775, General Montgomery and 1,200 troops are joined by General Philip Schuyler at Isle of Mont. Schuyler will order an immediate advance into Canada, and the assault on Quebec begins. Arnold will be coming up the Kennebec River from the other direction. In June of 1776, the retreating American troops stopped at Pointe-à-Fer after the disaster in Quebec, dying from smallpox, which the monument we're going to unveil today commemorates. By 1777, Pointe-à-Fer was back in British hands and fortified. General Simon Fraser and the advance parties of General John Burgoyne's invasionary force used the point as a staging area on their way to the fateful Battle of Saratoga, which obviously we prevailed and sent them packing to Canada. So, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Tom now, and he's going to talk in more detail on the Battle of Pointe-à-Fer.
Thank you, Tom. Before I get started, I have to also say, though, that Mr. Mandeville, Professor Mandeville, is representing Ensign John Wood, who I will tell the story of, and the significance of that man at this site. I belong to Jaeger's Battalion, which is a nationwide group of 16 companies spread throughout the states of independent companies of reenactors of Robert Rogers. And Pointe-à-Fer is the most significant battle that Major Robert Rogers ever participated in. It is the most complete victory that he ever accomplished. You've heard May and June. Well, he receives his orders in May. May 25th, he receives his orders from General Jeffrey Amherst to proceed north into the Richelieu River Valley and to destroy St. John's, St. Maurice, Chambly, and anything that's in his way. He's doing guerrilla fighting. He brings, you'll hear the number 300 all the time. To the point, he ends up bringing 190 Rangers and 25 light infantrymen. The 25 Stockbridge Mohican Indians are delayed in Albany and they don't arrive until the 9th. That's another part of the battle. You have to be careful here with me as I'm a yacker. And I'll talk for 3 or 4 hours because when Tom and I do this with the college, as he said, it takes us 3 or 4 hours to do this. And we go from point A to point B all around here. We will go through the swamp because the battle is here, it's north of here, it's to the west of here. But it is here. Now my wife, my good wife, Karen, reminded me that this is a Memorial Day observation, and I'm not teaching a history class. So my real reason to be here is to say that there were 16 Rangers who died for their country here at that point. There were 30 French who died for their country here. There were probably 20 some odd Native Americans who died here. The 16 Rangers were buried at Barrett's Island, which is now called Cloak Island, south of Isle La Motte. The French, we don't know. Some of them went back to Isle en Noix. The rest of them are probably in the swamp or in the field still. We know that Rogers collected 50 packs and found 3 bodies, but there were more than that. So my primary concern for being here is that we memorialize those men who fought and died for their countries and their governments, who got caught up in the middle of politics that they really didn't have anything to do with, other than Pipin Laforce, who leads the French down here, is killed in the initial volley. His second in command, Jean Longueville, is severely wounded and will never fight again. Ensign Wood dies in the first few minutes of the battle. Jacob Farrington leads a flanking movement around through the swamp that the natives did not come over, and that's why Robert Rogers and his men were able to win this battle. But as I said, it's the most significant victory that he accomplished. I'm not going to get into the specifics. It will take far too long, and there's a lot of other people here that have to speak. I just want to say that I'm very honored to be here. I'm so happy to see this. I'm glad to see the history of this region is
really starting to be noted. I'm happy to see all the people that came to observe this, and I actually want to just say thank you. Thank you, Thomas, and Tom. Excellent job. Okay, well, now we're going to have the unveiling of the plaque and laying of the wreath by the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution. We're honored here today to be present with Mrs. Susan Jones, Regent of the Saranac chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Mrs. Jones, would you step forward? I'll give you a quick background. Mr. John Scales, a local farmer, was contacted by the DAR in 1929 to determine exactly what regiment was stationed at the White House, a Revolutionary War fortification at Pointe-à-Pierre. Mr. Scales was most willing to cooperate with the DAR, and it was brought to the attention, after it was brought to the attention by the Saranac chapter of the DAR, that there were graves on Pointe-à-Pierre that had been there for nearly 150 years, unattended and unmarked. It was decided that the spot should be fittingly marked. A bronze memorial tablet was dedicated on October 11th, 1930, in an impressive ceremony attended by several hundred people. Over the years, changes occurred at Pointe-à-Pierre, and the bronze tablet was removed from its boulder and brought to the town of Champlain offices, where it was stored and eventually restored. As part of the town of Champlain's Quadricentennial activities, it was decided that this year we would work to replace the boulder and relocate its plaque. Thanks to the generosity of Dan and Ann Rochester, who donated the land, the town acquired this site, and thanks to Alan Racine's hard work in preparing the site, and along with his crew, and a lot of teamwork from the Quad Committee, we have arrived at this point today. We contacted the Saranac chapter of the DAR and invited them to honor us with their presence today, as we honor the work that they did in 1929 and 1930. Would you like to say a few words?
It's a privilege to be the spokesperson for the Saranac chapter and representing the ladies who are here with me today to honor these revolutionary workers.
Thank you very much for being here. Would you like to,
As Chris Trombley said, Gordy, this plaque is in memory of the Revolutionary War era soldiers that are buried here.
Here, 79 years ago. We're happy to continue your care and tradition. Thank you. I'd like to ask Kathy and Penny to sing America the Beautiful. If you could join us, please. Give them a hand. Okay, now another part of interesting history in the chapter of Pointe-à-Pierre. Mentioned earlier that the DAR contacted Mr. Scales in 1929 to obtain more information about the military activities that took place here. They were especially interested in the White House, and we'll hear more about the White House a little bit later in the program. While working with Mr. Scales, it was decided to excavate the graves that were in the vicinity of the White House. The White House was located just over in that corner. It was expected that buttons, trinkets, coins, knickknacks, and etc. would be found. However, one of the trenches yielded many hand-made coffin nails, human bones, and the top portion of a human skull and one tooth. These were placed in a box, which were kept in Mr. Scales' home, now occupied by Wanda Langley. David Patrick, a descendant of the McClellan family of Champlain, has spent a lot of time reviewing his family records, researching historical data about Pointe-à-Pierre, and eventually shedding additional light on his significant military history. And he also became aware of the presence of these bones. David and Wanda agreed that it was time to pay respect to this unknown man who died for his country. David contacted Celine Paquette, who in turn contacted the New York State Historic Preservation Society, or New York State Historic Preservation. She was advised to contact Clinton County Coroner David Dona. David and Michael Ludwig, a forensic pathologist from Plattsburgh, examined these bones. After they documented the exam, David Patrick carefully placed the bones in a crafted box by Charles Langley, Wanda's son. The coffin nails I mentioned previously were also placed in this box with the bones. The box was then placed in a small vault donated by Corey Ross of the Ross Funeral Home in Moores. Today we honor this soldier and all the others who had died and were buried here at Pointe-à-Pierre soil. I will now invite the American Legion Post 767 Commander Alfred Strack, American Legion Post 9112 Commander Hector Coffin, VFW Post 1418 Commander Earl Robinson, VFW Post 8722 Alfred Labonte, and the Royal Canadian Legion 244 Branch Gordon Hill up to help us with this ceremony. These men will carry the remains and place them in the ground, and following this we will have the salute to the fallen and the last post. want to, very impressive fellows. I want to say a round of appreciation to Dr. Alan Kaufman, Ross Point American Legion Commander, for arranging the Veterans Today, the salute, and the bugler. Alan, you really made this ceremony very special. Good job. Just to keep on schedule because they have another commitment in Ross's Point shortly. I mentioned the White House several times today. We would like to invite everyone over for just down the road a few yards to unveil another special historic marker. We're going to let some of the veterans take off to head back towards Ross Point if they wish. We also have coffee and donuts here for everyone, just shortly located behind us. And if I missed anyone today, you're all special guests. I apologize if I did miss anyone, but thank you for making this a very special Memorial Day. And come on down the road. Thank you. Also a free luncheon at the American Legion at Ross's Point.
We're going to head for the White House here shortly, Gordy, but before we do that, I don't want to forget to mention that 234 years ago, Benedict Arnold left here on May 16th, and Benedict Arnold went on to capture St. John's, and another event that initiated here and started here, and it's nice to see all this happening here and people in the community recognizing their history. Let's move on to the White House.
All right, let's do that.
I'm just going to read like a paragraph, I think.
Whatever you do, David, will be fine and dandy. We're at the site of the White House, and David Patrick has studied this area over and over and over again, and we've talked about it. Isn't it nice to see this good crowd here, David?
It's very nice. I mean, it's more than I expected. There's a lot of people here, and probably had a couple hundred people here. I'm very, very happy to see this the ceremony taking place.
Why is it important to have a plaque up here?
Because the site here is probably one of the most historic sites in all of Clinton County. It was a military site from 1760, or at least for the French and Indian War, up until even the War of 1812, which really no one really knows, but because there were some War of 1812 troops stationed here, but the majority of the installation was by the British for 20 years up until 1796, after the war, after the Revolutionary War. And the Americans also were here. Benjamin Franklin, believe it or not, may have stopped by. Benedict Arnold for sure, Ethan Allen, who's who of American and British generals.
We're going to talk in a few minutes. We're ready to get underway.
The only thing we couldn't control today was the weather and the wind, so.
I don't have a loudspeaker, so. Today we're going to unveil this marker, and with the help of David Patrick. No one has done more research or written more extensively on the history of Pointe-à-Fer than David. This marker was donated by the Friends of Champlain. The wording on this plaque was done by David, and I believe he did the painting on the plaque too as well.
Painting to save a little money.
He did the painting to save a little bit of money. David will read the inscription on the plaque, and because we're short on time, he's going to talk to Calvin, Hometown Cable, and do a complete interview on the whole history, and he'll give a brief history too on where we are and the significance of this area. David?
So let me just say briefly that the site right here is probably one of the most historic sites. There, probably one of the most historic sites in all of Clinton County. We had Rogers Rangers here, 1760. Then the British, 1774, built the White House. 1775, the Americans came and fortified it. This is an entrenchment right here that was actually built by the American general. It looks like a stream, but it was an entrenchment, and there was a stockade 12 feet high of logs going all the way around the house over to the Parker side. And so the British were here, the Americans were here, Very briefly, after the Battle of Valcourt, the Americans left here and became into British hands from 1775 or 76 to 1796. It was one of 6 sites that were held by the British even after the Revolutionary War. And so anyway, you had Benjamin Franklin that may have been here very briefly on his way to Montreal, Benedict Arnold, Ethan Allen. Burgoyne's army was camped all throughout these fields, going way back to the end. Over where you parked your cars, the Burgoyne's army was there, going right up to the lake shore. The burial grounds were actually over in the woods right over there where the one of the campsites is. That was the original burial ground. So anyway, there's a lot of history to this. The biggest history is the White House. And so what we did was we wrote a plaque up, and that dedicates the history of the White House and the side.
Do it slowly.
So basically, the White House was a 1774 two-story white stone garrison built here by the British, fortified by the American General John Sullivan with a stockade and entrenchment, which I mentioned earlier, as well as a covered park walkway, and it was destroyed by fire 1805 by a French refugee. And the British occupation was 74 to 75, and then from 1776 to 96. And then the encampment of the British Army was very brief, only for a few days, June 1777, on their way to Saratoga. A lot of people that were camped all around here died at Saratoga in Bennington, Vermont. And also near here, I wanted to mention Rogers Rangers. It's believed that Rogers Rangers came on the shore down here, across the fields here, engaged the French, and then 16 soldiers were killed and a lot of French were killed, and they pushed the French into the Cedar Swamp, which is just a few hundred feet behind us, and that's when the British gained control of this area. So that's the plaque, and it dedicates the White House, which is exactly where the Langley House is today. The Langley House is built on the old foundation of the original fort. So all of this land here, going way back into the woods, is probably one of the most historic sites that's in Clinton County, and it really has remained untouched except for the plow that with the fields here. It's one of the few areas that has not been touched over the years. So thank you for coming.
Okay, continue on from where we left off. This is a wonderful spot. Oh, sure.
Get a picture right in front of the. We lost Kathy and Penny. They had another engagement, so if somebody could lead us
Right in front, right in the middle.
God bless America.
Yeah.
I think we can get through it without them.
Okay.
That's that. Go ahead.
No, I can't say.
Go ahead, Gordy. Start it off. Go ahead.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the valleys, to the oceans, wide with all.
I think that was the wrong key, but it started good.
Thank you.
The sun is shining on us on this Memorial Day, Celine
Because
Paquette.
it's a special day.
Isn't it great? The more things we can quadricize, the better we are.
You got it. You got
How's it going with you, and how pleased are you to see this happen?
Today, it culminates a dream of about 6, 7, 8 years ago when we were aware of this plaque and we've refurbished it and we said, we have to put it back on a boulder. And we kept saying, we have to put it back on a boulder. Finally, when our Champlain Quad Committee was formed, I said, well, I have an idea. Why don't we dedicate the plaque? So that's how this whole ceremony came about.
Absolutely wonderful, and I'm not sure that our viewers are aware of how much hard work went into clearing that space, putting the plaque on there, and making it presentable for this commemoration ceremony today.
A lot of work, a lot of teamwork. Of course, we had to negotiate the donation of that site, the donation of the land, which went very well, and got a surveyor. You know, you did things right. And then that land had to be cleared. And Alan Racine, Superintendent of Highways, and his crew worked very, very hard to make it as attractive as it is now. And then the plaque got put back on this gorgeous boulder, which had been removed initially. The plaque remained, but the boulder was removed. The original boulder.
And then to come down here and dedicate this wonderful historic marker from the White House, which itself is laden with history, isn't it?
Well, David Patrick wanted to do this, and as you know, he researched it extensively, and David and I sponsored this plaque. We're the Friends of Champlain.
Well, you certainly are the Friends of Champlain. There are a lot of friends who are involved in wishing you well for this, but the committee here in Champlain has done a fine job too, haven't they?
Very good. We have a couple other events planned coming up this year, yes, absolutely.
I think, as I've said before, since many people are viewing these programs on the internet at Plattsburgh.com, they've never been to Point of Fair.
No.
And they've certainly never been to the intersection of the Scales Road. There's a name that we've mentioned many times already today, and the Point of Fair Road.
That's right.
We've talked about God's country before, but this is a special spot.
This is very, very special. And yes, people were asking me for directions here. They had no clue where Point of Fair.
All those GPS devices, Scales Road.
Yes.
Well, wasn't it nice to see several hundred people here gathered?
Oh, I can't believe the number of people that were here. This is great.
It was.
I hope they attend our other events like that.
I hope they do. And there were several hundred people gathered in this general area in 1930.
Absolutely.
When the plaque was dedicated by the DAR.
That's right.
Way back when.
And these ladies were so delighted to be contacted about this. I think they weren't aware. They looked in their scrapbooks and found this. Yeah.
Well, David Patrick and so many others are passionate about this as being a tremendously historic spot.
Yeah, that's right.
And the fact that it's virtually untouched except by the farmer's plow.
I know it.
Isn't that a great line?
Well, we're ignored up here in so many ways, and even our dead soldiers are ignored.
It's amazing. But as vice chairman of this commission, how has it been for you so far? I know it's a little hectic.
It's been very, very busy. I've concentrated my time on Clinton, Essex, and Washington counties because that's the Lake Champlain. Those are the Lake Champlain counties. So we have a lot of events coming up. In fact, I find myself I should be in 2 places at once sometime. Yeah. So.
Well, it's nice to be here today.
Yeah, I wouldn't miss this one. Yes.
You can only, as life is in general, it's one day at a time.
Absolutely. But we have a lot of nice events coming up in the Champlain Valley, and our main one will be September 19th, Crown Point. Yeah, that's our biggie.
We'll try to be there.
I hope so. And be there for our next 2 events here in Champlain, too.
That's wonderful. Celine, thanks so much for all your help.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Norman Manette, I heard him introduce you before.
Oh, yes.
You haven't been here for 55 years.
Yes, I have.
Where did you come from when you moved here?
I came from, actually, I worked at Harris for 34 years. I came from Moores, basically. I was born in Champlain.
So this is your old stamping ground anyway.
I've been in Clinton County all my life.
You know what? This has got to be a special day for you.
It was very nice. I thought it was a very, very nice celebration.
Wasn't it? It's Memorial Day, and I've used the word remembering and remembrance down through the years. Okay, get over here, Norm. But it's got to please you to see all these people.
Oh
coming
yes,
by.
I was surprised to see how many people there was.
Isn't it wonderful?
Really wonderful. Really wonderful. They did a great job.
Well,
Great job.
55 years. What year was that when you moved here?
It was
1954.
Yeah, I got out of service in 53, and it was 55 I moved here, around 55.
Yeah.
So it not quite 55 years.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Who's
though.
got to count it except Calvin there? I saw his fingers moving.
It was hard times. I thought it was great living here, but today I would never do it. We used to have to go through water. I went through water for 15 years with a wagon and a tractor in the morning.
Come on.
No, I couldn't get out in the spring of the year. The water was over the road.
All the way up through here?
Up to the corner. We had about a half a mile of road to go through.
You got to be kidding.
No,
I know there's a swamp here, but I didn't realize it came up that high.
They built the road up. You know, the road's been built up for about 4 feet. We used to go with Charlie Langley and his tractor and wagon to go to work in the morning.
You got to be
Oh
kidding.
no, for 10 years, 15 years like that.
Oh my goodness, what a story. It's hard for us to imagine that today.
It was rough.
This hasn't been flooded in a long time now.
Well, because they built the road up.
Yeah. Is that
great.
what happened?
Sure.
Norman, you're the best. You know that?
We used to spear fish with waders in the road. in the road.
Oh, I've heard tall tales in my life, but that's a great story.
Oh yes.
Well, you did whatever you needed to do to get around it.
And I was young, so I didn't mind.
Yeah, we didn't care back in those days.
I'd never do it again, though.
I love it. Norm, thanks so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day, will you?
Pleasure meeting you, too.
You too. Good day for everybody, and I know there are at least 10,000 words you didn't get a chance to say here in the interest of time, but we don't care, so go for it, David.
So I'll just read an overview of the history of the White House and the site here, just for the listeners who were not here today, who to see the dedication. So last May, I was asked by the Town of Champlain office to write a quad grant for the plaques we're dedicating today. I realized at the time this opportunity may not present itself again for some time. Many years ago, I came out here to explore the fields and forests around us and learn about the point's rich history. I was told of the Revolutionary War skeleton that had been dug up years ago. After looking through the news archives, I found the articles that described the location of the burial ground and the exhumation of the skeleton. 2 years ago, I found the likely burial ground and the original location of this marker and talked with the current owners of this property about the history of the plaque, which, as you say, had not been moved by them, but it was moved around 1980. I brought Celine Paquette and Addie Shields out here, and we discussed the need to bury the bones, the plaque, and the idea of a new blue and yellow historic marker to mark this site. This culminated into the writing of the quad grant last year. Today, we're finally dedicating these sites. I want to thank the Quad Committee for organizing today's events, the Rochesters for donating the land, Alan Racine and his highway crew for his superb work on both sites, Wanda Langley for support and for providing the pine box for the bones, and of course Celine Paquette and Jane West for helping to make all this possible last year with the grant. So today we dedicated the DAR plaque from 1930. The site on the other side of the road where the plaque was is the original burial ground. The site had been called sacred ground by one historian in the 1860s when it was just open pasture or field. At this time, several large mounds and the smaller individual mounds could be seen on the lake shore just past the hedges. These were likely mass graves for the soldiers and individual graves for the officers. Crude stones marked the mounds. Even in the 1920s, the mounds could be seen. To determine if the remains were that of American or British soldiers, the DAR and the owner of the property, John Scales, dug up several graves in October of 1929. 40 people were watching the dig. Coffin nails and bones were found, but no buttons that would have indicated whether the soldier was American or British. In October of 1930, the plaque was dedicated at the location of the mounds on this lakeshore. While we do not know the exact location of these mounds today, we have a general idea based on the location of the original boulder. Today, a second rock from the lakeshore has been placed in the hole of the original boulder. As for the unknown soldier dug up in 1929, I had the honor last week of placing his bones in a small pine box for burial today. The coroner said the soldier was probably in his teens or early 20s, and by today's standards was a very small person. The site where the Scales House is built is probably the most historic location in all of Clinton County, which I mentioned earlier. I say this with firm belief. It has a 54-year military history up to the War of 1812, as well as continuous occupation by the British even after the Revolutionary War. Only 6 other locations in the United States can attest to this, including one in North Hero at Blockhouse Point. On June 6, 1760, the French and Indian War, Major Robert Rogers, commander of a group called Rogers Rangers, battled a small French force near here. It is speculated his force landed to the south of us and crossed over the fields here. About 40 Frenchmen were killed and the rest fled into the Cedar Swamp. 16 Rangers died in the fight, and Britain gained control over this part of the lake. Little would happen here for another 14 years. In 1774, the British decided to build a small fort here at this site. It is written that the building was a white, 2-story stone and mortar building about 40 by 50 feet rectangular. It had a strong ball-proof brick sentry boxes at each corner, which commanded every inch of ground around the house. The structure had walls 3 feet thick and floors of nearly the same dimension. The roof was double boarded and its oak shingles were attached with wrought nails. The cellar was divided into 4 rooms, one to serve as a magazine and another to surround a well. The walls of the cellar had 44 embrasures for small cannon. It earned the nickname of the White House by 1775. In May of 75, a small American force ousted the British and gained control of the fort. American General John Sullivan made significant improvements to the fort in June of 76. He had an entrenchment, which we see here, which is behind me. It looks like a stream today, but it's not. And he lined the area with a wooden stockade around the fort. It was during this time that Benjamin Franklin may have landed here on his way to Montreal. Benedict Arnold, Charles Carroll, Ethan Allen also passed by here. On their retreat from Canada, the American soldiers brought back smallpox. General Sullivan wrote to George Washington to say that the raging of smallpox derives us of whole regiments in the course of a few days. Of the remaining regiments, from 50 to 60 in each are fallen down in a day. These are the soldiers that are buried close by. Several resources say that as many as 160 Americans may have been buried in the graveyard. It is likely that some British soldiers are buried here too. After the Battle of Valcourt in October of 76, the Americans lost control of Pointe-au-Fer. The British came down here as early as February of 77 to set up command. This set the stage for General Burgoyne's army in June of 77, when half his 8,000-man army, made up of British and German soldiers, as well as their families, axemen, and general laborers, landed on these shores. They were camped all around us here. Several picket guards were camped at the end of the field. A large group of soldiers camped in the open field just down the road. They came ashore where the blue trailer is today. They also camped in the woods down the road. Many are likely buried in the graveyard with American soldiers when several British soldiers were killed by a felled tree. So after staying at Pointe-au-Fer, Burgoyne's army traveled down to Crown Point and Ticonderoga and captured the forts. He was only here a few days. But in October, Burgoyne's army was in ruins, and the defeat in Bennington and Saratoga. Many of his soldiers that camped here died on this campaign. After the Revolutionary War, the British claimed all of the land south of the Chazy. They maintained a post here as well as on North Hero. Young Plenty Moore, my relative, in 78, settled on Champlain town, and the relationship with the British was strained as well as cordial. At times he would be warmed off the soil. At other times, the British commander was giving his respects to Moore and his wife. Judge Moore noted the British jurisdiction at Pointe-au-Fer ranged as far as their cannons would fire. At the conclusion of Jay's Treaty in 1794, the British left the site in 1796. So soon the White House was in despair. A French refugee lived here briefly and burned down the fort in 1805. During the War of 1812, it is known that a small force of American Army soldiers camped here in the overgrown area by the house. This fact is not found in any history books. They likely watched for the northern part of the lake for the British naval activity. The state of New York soon owned much of Pointe-à-Fer. The Nye family of Champlain owned 540 acres that included all of the Cedar Swamp to Route 9 as well as the campgrounds. In 1939, George Rochester bought some of the property here, and the family has lived in this area ever since. In the 1870s, Richard Scales purchased lot number 2 and built the house we see here using the stonework of the ruined fort. The Scales family has lived here ever since at what is now Scales Point. I can clearly state that the land surrounding the site, especially the grounds we're standing on now inside the entrenchment, is probably the most historic site in all of Clinton County. Except for the plow, the fields and forests here have remained largely untouched. Few sites in Clinton County can attest to this. Let this area remain sacred. So it is here in 2009, 250 years after the first history noted today, that we are dedicating this New York State historic marker as well as the DAI marker over at the other site.
Wonderful piece of history, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very nice doing this.
Well, we walked back to the original location, but we stopped here by the road for a good reason, David.
Yeah, the original burial ground, I believe, is on the lake shore on the property in the back here, which is adjacent to Rolla Parker's. Back in 1860s, you could actually see individual burial mounds. You could see a large trench, and then you could see individual mounds, and you could see it even as late as 1929. And that's what prompted the DAR and John Scales to dig up the graves. And in 1930, we know for sure that they put the original boulder that's now in the Rouse's Point Park across from the post office at the site on this property here, because when it was moved in maybe 1980, the owner of the property put a plaque or a boulder from the lakeshore in its place. So we know that the boulder was, we know where the mounds were, and we also know that John Scales said that in the Press Republican, believe it or not, that he sold some people a graveyard, and they didn't know it at the time, but that was probably in the 1950s, and a few owners have passed since that time. Fortunately, the land has basically remained undisturbed on the new property. So we dedicated the site over here across the road, which was about as close as we could get to the original site, and still have it be town property and under town control. And that's what we dedicated today. It's actually very close to the original site.
It's great. David, thanks so much for all of your help.
Thank you.
You're a great historian. Gentlemen, great to have you here today in your historic garb. Tom Mandeville, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Tommy Bray.
Good. Happy to be here.
Connie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Oh, that's terrific. What do you think?
It's about time that this is commemorated and remembered here, as far as I'm concerned. It's long overdue.
You guys have spent so much time focusing on this area and a lot of the other history in this area. Tommy, since he was a little boy following the plow, praise, picking up buttons and arrowheads and so on. But to see something like this happen.
And such a good turnout, too. It was a fabulous turnout.
Now, we said before, in 1930, there were a couple hundred people here, a couple hundred people here again in 2009. And you and everybody else who spoke today underline the fact that this is an important place historically. It is, isn't it, Tom?
It certainly is, and it's underappreciated.
Yeah.
But this should begin the appreciation of this site and point, and it's been a strategic point from probably 11,000 years ago when Native American people were here hunting and fishing.
Tommy would know that too, wouldn't you?
Well, historically, this site and the point itself is probably one of the most significant sections of land in this region for early Native American all the way up to pretty much almost the Civil War for history. The whole battle of Robert Rogers here with the 190 men that he brings here is just so much overlooked. You'll see it mentioned in early journals and stuff. And it was so important that in like 1762, William Brazier, who was the king's cartographer, writes on the map that near this spot, Major Rogers had an engagement with the French and Indian. He doesn't write anything like that anywhere else on that map of the whole valley. So it's a significant spot. It's significant for the battle because after the battle, the natives who fought for the French, they're so badly beaten up here that they leave. They are done. They virtually leave the service of the French king. They sue for peace with the English forces after this battle. The partisans and the milice go home because now, as Tom mentioned during the speech, this is French land. And now you're being invaded by the British. They want to go home and protect their families. So just that aspect alone here is unbelievable historically.
So there are some historians who might be aware of Point Affair, but the general population is not.
No, they're not.
And you know, we've talked about best kept secrets, and we seem to have a lot of those here in the North Country.
Yes, we do.
It's not that we're closed-minded and overprotective of our backyards, but most of these people have been magnanimous in inviting the public up here. The donation of this land, the erection of this plaque again, and I almost called it the magic marker, the historical marker down the road, are very important in terms of history, and hopefully Calvin Castine and his camera for Hometown Cable and on the internet at Plattsburgh.com will spread this on the internet far and wide. And who knows, you guys might have to have a celebration here every year at this time.
Well, we hope to have our big one next year, as John Zerlo was mentioning,
Absolutely.
the 250th anniversary. We're going to start the planning this afternoon at my house, in fact.
Going to do it right on June 6th?
Well, it depends on when the weekend falls. I haven't looked at a calendar.
That's so important.
But, you know, 5th is a Saturday? Perfect. 4th, 5th, and 6th, it looks like.
So for this year, I got rid of the trailer. Next year, we're going to scrape and paint the cabin. How's that?
Jack Southwick.
How are you, John? Good to see you, my friend.
Yes,
I knew you'd get involved here if you came
My
by.
daughter, Connie.
Hi, Connie. Are you the one that gets congratulated with all these accolades? Oh, my goodness. I hear...
She's a history major, too, at Hobart and William Smith.
Hobart and William Smith. Good for you. I hope you'll be teaching at a high school near here.
College.
Oh, college. You might as well go.
Her older sister, Beth, just received her teaching degree from St. John Fisher, and she's looking for a job teaching in this area. She's an elementary school teacher.
We'll create new positions for all of you. Gentlemen.
And guess what one of her majors was also?
Get out of the way.
No.
History, of course.
Oh, well, how could you not? It's in your genes and in your bones, and there's history in these bones here, which I hope will be buried before this day is finished. That's one of our purposes in being here.
We're going to take care of that.
But gentlemen, I want to thank Tommy.
I was just going to say, I think that what was happening early on that has now changed, and Tom's definitely helped doing it. We did a thing for a while at the college called Off the Beaten Path, and most of these sites, that's exactly where they are. They're off the beaten path.
And this was one of them.
And this was one of them that we did. But now that there's a plaque, there's a monument, there's something for people to come see. Other than that, they would just drive by and not know. You know, you're looking at woods here going, that's woods.
Yeah.
You know,
you wouldn't know. Isn't it great that there is an interest in school in young people? Because after all, there's no way we're going to preserve this history past us unless we get people like Connie involved in perpetuating our great passion for the North Country history. You guys have done a great job so far. You're just going to have to talk a little louder and longer. I don't have to say longer in terms of Tommy over here, because he's good till Tuesday morning.
Well, that's why I was warned to not get
John
carried away.
Zerlo told us to keep it short and sweet, so we did.
It's a great day for everybody. Happy Memorial Day, and thanks so much for being here and all you've done to preserve history.
Well,
you
thank
too,
you.
Connie. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Who do you want to talk to next?
We want to make sure to get the wording on this plaque on the record here. To the unknown soldiers, British and Americans, 1776 to 1798. This tablet dedicated by the Saranac Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, Plattsburgh, New York, in 1930, and of course rededicated here in part of the Quadricentennial in 2009. Let's see if Chris Trombley's got time to chat with us.
All right. You thought you could escape. Not till you chat with me for a while. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. How are you doing?
I'm just terrific. Could this day turn out any better?
It's unbelievable. It was supposed to rain all weekend, and today was just one of 3 days, beautiful consecutive days.
Lick your finger and hold it up and say, yeah, this is great.
It was, the gods were with us today.
You, as chairman of this committee, you spent a little time preparing this, didn't you?
Yeah, we spent some time preparing it amongst other things, and I think what overshadows this event was all the planning that's gone on throughout the year with my rest of the committee members in between trying to organize shirts and sales and the other events that are planned for later in the year. It's so easy to get wrapped up, and this thing really came upon us very, very quickly. But it worked out fairly well. We had a beautiful day, and like anything else, we had a few hiccups, but the most important thing was to remember the veterans and just remember the day.
Remember is the word. I use the word
It is.
remember several times today because that's what Memorial Day is meant to be. And if we haven't done remembering here today, nobody has.
Right.
Wasn't it nice to be such a large crowd here?
I was very amazed. We were here bright and early this morning, and Richard Favreau, who, like I said, was godfather of this event, and really pushed it through. There's a lot of people.
Costume too. Right?
Oh, he had a nice costume. Yeah, he looks a little bit old, but he had a nice costume. But he was worried about traffic and parking and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to say too much, but I said, well, we're not going to have that many people. But I was very surprised. We called the Sheriff's Department, Clinton County Sheriff's Department, Dave Favreau.
Yeah, special thanks to them for
unbelievable.
Directing traffic both ends of the Scales Road. And, sending people down here, getting people parked. There were no hitches as far as that goes.
No hitches, as far as everything went. People were a little miffed because they can only go down one way, so to speak, but that's the way we planned it.
Didn't bother me a bit. I knew exactly where I was going.
And I think everybody else was genuinely surprised about the amount of people that were going to be here. Memorial Day, we tend to make it a holiday, which it really is, but this is the first Memorial Day ceremony I've been to. I've been to a few of them, not as many as I should. I'll be the first to admit it. But this one was really moving. It was really touching.
Chris, how did you get involved with this committee? Especially, how did you get elected to run the show?
I asked that question many times. Well, I'm privileged enough to be with certain people like fellow committee member Steve Southwick. I don't want to leave anybody out. Dick Favreau, Calvin, fellow historians, and I think back on how this committee formed. Obviously, Celine asked us to meet a couple years ago, or just over a year now, and I've learned so much and been so privileged to work with these people. It's just unreal. How I got to be chairman, I really don't know. I got talked into it like anything else. Calvin was too busy for the job, so they asked me to do it.
Well, he did well in chronicling this today, and I know how hard he works behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
The history of this area is so important to preserve, especially right here on this road. I learned so much about the history of this area today.
Exactly. I'm very ashamed that, I've lived in town all my life, and never really understood Point of Fair and what it was about, or I knew it was a nice place to live, but that's about it. I never really. And as I grew up, I read about Point of Fair and found it, but I really am just starting to appreciate the whole history behind Point of Fair.
And the local people who live on this road and this beautiful piece of land are embracing the history, and most of the residents were here today.
Most of the residents were here. Tom Mandeville, which everybody from Tom Mandeville who just moved here, professor at Clinton Community College. I've taken classes with Tom before. We've talked about this area before. But you can see the love of this area just in the residents, and they take a lot of pride in this section of town, which is great.
Now explain to us, because we're standing here later in the day than the event itself on Memorial Day. The box containing the bones of the British soldier are still there. What's going to happen?
Well, basically, after almost, I hate to say it, but like a funeral, after everybody leaves, we're going to respectfully just put the box in the ground, so to speak, cover it up, and Alan Racine, who couldn't make it for the ceremony, which is really a big shame because Alan, the town of Champlain Highway Superintendent, was just
so much involved in getting this ready.
It was
here.
him and his crew. If it wasn't for Alan and his
Just
crew,
amazing job.
it's just amazing. I wish we had pictures of what it looked like before. I mean, it was just nothing but brush. And I said, hey, a 20 by 20 area, we'll never do it. We'll never make it. But this turned into and Danny Rochester. I don't want to leave anybody out, but Alan Racine worked so hard to make this happen.
It was so nice to see all the people who are involved in history as an avocation or for a living here today to enjoy this. I think this little ceremony up here today is going to be one of the most significant for
Yes.
the quadricentennial year. It certainly is for those of us who are involved up here.
I have to agree with you. A couple hours ago, I would have said, I don't know, but now I think you're right.
You did an awesome job, and you did a fine job as MC, Chris.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for all your dedication.
Thank you, Gordy. Thanks, Calvin.
It's been a great day so far, Calvin. I know you've worked really hard on this committee, so it's got to be personally satisfying for you to see it come together.
Yeah, I came across one of my biggest concerns was the weather, and
here we are.
Not sure who was in charge of the weather, but I want that person on the committee I serve on in the future.
Yeah.
It turned out great. Nice to hear that we're going to have another celebration next year for the Rogers Rangers thing. I know John Zerlo will be involved in that also, and we have to look forward to probably 16 years from now, which would be 2025, when they'll celebrate Benedict Arnold being here in 1775 and going up to St. John's and that battle that took place there. So this was a staging point for a lot of events that happened throughout our history, and also with the Rogers Rangers battle here, important thing right there with the White House, the number of soldiers. I believe it's 120 some odd who died of smallpox over that one short period of time.
It's amazing,
about
isn't it?
600 were garrisoned here at that time, but I'm sure we'll learn more and more of that as these people like David Patrick, like Tom Mandeville and Tom Prey, these historians who work so hard to uncover this stuff, uncover more facts for us.
And those people who are watching this program, your kids can go to school and ask their teacher where the White House is.
Yeah.
If the teacher says Washington, D.C., they can say, no, it's on Point Affair.
The original one is right here, yes. Yes, it was actually a fort, and it's nice that the Rochester family, who's got so much personal history here, was involved with this, with Danny and his wife donating this property, Jim putting out that book. I've been after him
for a long time.
Constantly.
He held it proudly today.
That book going to be ready in time. That book going to be ready, and of course Elaine Cloutier, Elaine Rochester Cloutier, got painting done, so that there is all great. And we can't leave without mentioning the Zerlo family, because Eugene Zerlo, and abetted by his brother John Zerlo, were very instrumental. The Point Affair book that Alan Everest did, which has been such an important condensation of the history here, but he did that in 1992. That was spurred and financed by Eugene and also a little bit by John Zerlo. So the Zerlos have been very, very instrumental in preserving and sponsoring the history of Point Affair.
It's nice to have things like that. It's nice to have government grants to see that it happens, but without personal dedication, a lot of volunteer work by you and all the other people, and money. People put their own private funds into some of the things that happened here today, and that's great too.
Yes, it is. It is nice when people are able to do that. I was very happy when I brought up to the Woodman Lodge.
Special thanks to Woodman. Wow.
Donate that flagpole.
What a beautiful flagpole.
That's a nice dedication. And come September of this year, there will also be a similar flagpole dedication over at the new Champlain Community Park across from northeastern Clinton. And that'll be by the grave sites of the soldiers who died who were wounded in the Battle of Plattsburgh and died at Dewey Tavern. So the Woodman will also be has already purchased the flagpole, and that'll be a ceremony and erection this coming September.
And a very special thanks to the veterans groups who showed up here today on Memorial Day.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Gordy, because getting Alan Kaufman involved in this was what made this what it is. Because as soon as I'd asked Alan, I knew they had their thing going on in Rouse's Point. I said, we want to time this so that we can get the local veterans involved. And at 9 o'clock this morning, I was at 1418 VFW post, where American Legion Post 767 and the VFW have a combined Memorial Day service. And every year following that, I go to Rouse's Point, and in front of the library there, they have their ceremony with the post. I think it's 912, and the VFW is also involved, I believe. I know American Legion Post 912 spearheads it. So I asked Alan, I said, is there time after that? I was thinking early afternoon when we can do this, because theirs usually starts around 10:15, because they go to all the local cemeteries and then end up there. But Alan says, well, we can do that earlier if you want. We can do that at 10 o'clock, and then we'll just have hours later, or we could have our ceremony there instead. But they're still having their ceremony in Rouse's Point, so they had to leave. But once Alan got involved, this really became an event to remember. And of course, you got the boys from 1619 out of Plattsburgh involved.
Our dear friends. They're Johnny on the spot everywhere. John and his crew.
And Mike and all those other guys. They just really, I think, brought all this together. And then getting Tom Mandeville and Tom Prey involved, it all worked out great.
If you want to perpetuate history in your own family, take your kids for a Sunday afternoon ride. Whenever you see this, say, we're going in the car. Have you ever been to Point of Fair? They'll say no. Come up here and you can act like a historian after seeing this program. Bring your kids, your family, your grandmother, your grandpa here, your grandchildren, to see this wonderful plaque on the new boulder and the new Woodman flagpole, and then go down and take a look at that historic marker.
How appropriate that sign he picked up that was resting on says dead end on it.
Oh, I didn't even see that part of it.
Ironic more than anything else.
Oh my goodness.
And we should point out where Point of Fair is, because I'm sure with our vast worldwide audience, most people will have no idea. But it's just about 2 miles south of Rouse's Point on Route 9B. You pull off and find a Point of Fair road. So it's one of the top protrusions across the way here is the peninsula of Alberg and Windmill Point and that lighthouse and so on. So it's a very nice area, and it's just a couple miles south of Rouse's Point on 9B, right along the lake. So
it's a great spot in God's good earth right here. Not very far from the Canadian border, and just a few hundred feet from Lake Champlain. It's been a good day, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this program. I hope you tell your friends about it. If you're not watching this at Plattsburgh.com, go on the website and tool around. You'll find many of our older programs. If you find it appropriate to support this effort, get a hold of Calvin Castine on the Ridge Road in Champlain at Hometown Cable and say, yes, I'd like to make a check to see that this program continues well into the future. If you have ideas for future programs, let us know about that too. We're glad to be of service. Thank you for honoring those who have given the supreme sacrifice on this Memorial Day. And as Kay said, as we had breakfast this morning, let's think about it every day. Thank you for watching, and who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.